Just trying to reach for greatness, man. It's a long road. I'm not saying I'm great now, but I'm saying I could be one day if I keep sticking to this grind. You know what I'm talking about? It's easier to think you're famous. It's harder to work for greatness. These kids nowadays get prevalence to the latest.
What's up, everybody? Josh Pizarro here with Jajan of Jajan Real Estate.
Hi guys, it's Janet with Jajan of Jajan Real Estate.
Yes, and what you guys are about to see is our first-time home buyers program. Here we pretty much gave a lot of information for our potential buyers, and it was really cool. Lots of information was given. We had what was it?
Yeah, so it was about the buying process, and basically we had our team of experts, an attorney, so Martin Jajan. He is of Jajan and Associates. And then we also had Ace W, sorry we cannot say his name, but Ace W and Chad Lumley of Citizens Bank, who we work closely with, and then Josh and I.
Yes, and shout out to Grand Street as well.
Grand Street Settlement. Thank you so much for giving us the venue to be able to host this, and we had an amazing turnout. So we hope you guys enjoy and take a look.
Yes, and definitely soak in all the information.
I just definitely want to thank you guys for coming out and taking time on this cold Tuesday to come out and listen to some of this information. Behind the J-Team brand, we do want to push our audiences for more ownership rather than rental. We see the principles that are learned in ownership. So here I want to share our network, which is some of the guys here at Citizens Bank and Martin Jajan Law. These guys have helped us facilitate deals and have had a lot of experience in the real estate field. So we just kind of wanted to share our network with you guys, and we really appreciate you guys coming out. So I'm gonna let Chad take over.
All right, hi, how's everybody doing? Everybody's good? Thank you guys for coming out. We really, we appreciate you guys coming out of your busy days, your busy day. So anyway, let's get started. Basically, I just want to jump right into it. Everybody here is here for some information or another having to do with buying. So that's why we're all here. Whether you're going to buy in a month, whether you're going to buy in a year, 2, 3 years, whatever. You're here to learn about the buying process. So there's basically steps to it. We kind of make up a team, right? There's the agent, there's the attorney, and then there's also the mortgage broker if you're going to use, if you're going to finance your unit. So the first step is always going to be your mortgage broker. A lot of people think that it's the agent. Go ahead, call your agent up, and let's start looking at properties. But without certain things, such as a pre-approval, nobody really wants to hear your offer. Let's just be honest. You know what I mean? That basically identifies and says, hey, this is what I can afford. And I've already gone to a bank, I've already spoken with a rep or an agent at the bank, and I've already been approved for this amount of money. So we're going to go ahead and start off with Citizens Bank, and we're going to have them step up and talk about what their role is and what they do in this buying process. All right? So I'll leave it to Chad.
How you guys doing? Good. So who here is actually think they're ready to buy a property? Who's feel like they're at the finish line, they're ready to get a pre-approval, they're ready to go. So everyone here is just for the information purpose, right? Which is great. I think the first mindset to figure out is self-evaluation and process, right? So you have to first evaluate yourself, and to do so, you kind of have to have an idea on where you are on assets, income, and credit. The first thing I would do is either whether you come to the bank and rerun your credit or you guys run your credit on your own, run your credit, see what's actually on your credit report, see what your middle score is. If there's anything on there that you feel shouldn't be on there, it kind of gives you a self-evaluation of how you're paying your bills. So are you paying them on time? Are you 30 days late? Are you 15 days late? Just, it's a reality check, right? To say, all right, this is where I am. As far as the preparation is concerned, if you see the credit report, it's great. You're about higher than a 740. If it's lower than a 740, then you now need to prepare to try and get it better. Now, you can receive a mortgage at lower than 740, but obviously we all here strive for greatness, and premium pricing is at a 740 mark. You can get a mortgage at about 640 as well, even as low as 620 if you start to go Sony May or FHA, but we'll get into that. As far as assets are concerned, a lot of people tend to get a little scared when they feel they don't have the full 20% to purchase a home. There are programs out there that will allow you to do 90%. There's programs out there that allow you to do up to 97%. It's just the awareness, right? It's actually preparing yourself to do what is needed to qualify for those programs. So I don't have a bunch of time, so we can't go into those individual programs, but if you want any more information, my card will be around and we can talk about that. And as far as income is concerned, you then need to look at your income versus what your expenses are every month, right? So if you find yourself making $60,000 to $100,000, but you're spending half of that every month on whatever your obligations are, then you probably need to then either cut those obligations down, or you tend to realize that maybe you can't afford what you thought you can. So those three items are more of a gist on a ballpark on what you would need to look at from a beginner perspective. There are preparations for all of those, right? So like I stated in the credit report, if you find that your credit report needs some help, it's always good to find that out a year before you're looking to buy, right? If you're looking to do that, it gives you a year to kind of increase that and put yourself in a better position. You don't want to put yourself in a position and then say, if I had known, right? So, and then with an asset perspective, you might realize, you know what, I don't have as much assets as I thought I did. I want a home at $400,000 versus $300,000, so I need to aggressively save a lot more. And then from an income perspective, that kind of creates a reality on what you can and cannot afford, right? We all would like $1 million home, but if your income is put in your perspective where you can only amount to X, then that's something you would have to look into. With all three of those things, if you have an understanding of these three things, I think you would put yourself in a great position to then go in and speak to somebody and say, hey, I'm looking to be pre-approved. And if you don't, let's say you have a problem with that, right? That's what we are here for. You call your mortgage broker, and that person will walk you through into the steps of what you need to do to get to that point. At that point, you get a pre-approval. You're able to shop freely, right? You don't have anybody that says, you know what, we're not going to take you seriously because you're not pre-approved from a bank. All the pre-approval really does is show that you have some skin in the game. It says that you've done your research, you feel like you're confident in your financials, and that you're ready to actually go out and buy. So from the pre-approval perspective, that's that. Once you have an actual offer, which you have a contract, that's when the whole transaction actually starts, right? So roughly around, depending on the type of property that you buy, co-op, condo, single family, the time it takes to close varies, right? Because each properties are different. Roughly about 6 weeks is a fair assessment on what a transaction should look like, right? If it's a co-op, it tends to take longer because they'll get into that co-op approval. The co-op handles that. But from that perspective, a 6-week time of documents, verifying assets, verifying jobs, things of that sort. If you are looking to buy a home, changing your job might not be the greatest idea, right? If you're looking to buy a home and you've been on your job for 5 years, but you said, you know what, I just don't want to do this anymore, I want to go to another job. You might want to take that into consideration, right? Because if you're switching jobs, the bank likes to see the consistency in work. The bank always likes to see that they can trust you with the money that they're lending you, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. And just, I think I touched based on the majority of the things that you would look for from a consumer perspective. There's a lot of things that go on in the back that you guys probably won't care for, or at least at this point. But from a consumer perspective, getting an idea of what you can afford, how you can go about affording it, and then going out and get it. That's the gist from a mortgage perspective.
And we're going to do like questions and answers
So
at the
if you
end,
guys
so
have
please
any
write down
questions
questions
for me.
and we'll talk about it at the end, okay?
No question is a bad question, so
Right.
please do not feel like you're uneducated for these questions.
So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Josh, thank you, Janet, for actually putting this together.
Thank you.
And hopefully you guys see some value out of it. So I really want you guys to just try to ask as many questions as possible, right? And Chad, he said something very important. Chad is actually one of our top bankers at Citizens Bank. I'm actually the VP at Citizens Bank. But preparedness is really what's key. I'm 35 now. I know I look a little younger. But when I first bought my first property, I was around 23, 24 years old. I can tell you back then, there weren't many seminars where you would put an agent, a banker, an attorney together. So this is so valuable because in today's marketplace, if you're looking for anything at a sale price point of 1.5 and lower, it's a very robust market. There's bidding wars left and right. So number one, Chad said a lot about the details on what you need to really sort of focus on, right? And I call it ICE, income, credit, employment, right? So those are the things that you really need to get in front of a banker probably 6 months before you even look to purchasing a home, because in case you have bad credit, you want to have that tenure, that time to kind of fix that credit. And a lot of times you may not know that payment that you thought was paid was still on collections, right? Or they could have the same name, same address, but it's not the right person. So you need to kind of clarify that and get that corrected ahead of time. A lot of times what I see is people tend to get pre-approvals the minute that they're ready, and you don't have that luxury of time to kind of get that fixed. So we run into a lot of those type of situations. What I really want to focus on today is, if you're looking to buy a home and you're renting today, from my experience, real estate is the biggest, wealth appreciation that you can actually obtain, right? So consider that. And to Chad's point, there's so many different vehicles that you guys can use that you don't have to put 20% down. You can put as low as 3.5% down. And the last point here is, I tend to find a lot of clients that tell me, Ace, I found an attorney, he's actually my relative, he's my cousin, my uncle, my aunt. I would definitely recommend using a professional attorney, because that's probably the biggest asset that you'll have when negotiating your transaction, right? So if you have a transaction that you're looking to make an offer on, you want your attorney to be able to get back that contract right away, review the steps that you would want, that you would negotiate, and really work with the other attorney and find out what are the issues. So today's panel, I'm speaking on behalf of all of them, but this is something really special that they've actually created for you guys, where you actually have the agent, the banker, and the attorney. So with that, I'll give it back to Janet, but please write down as many questions as you can, because today's, it's really about you guys. So try to get a lot out of it.
Thank you. Yes, that was definitely great what he said, and I think he hit all the points and kind of like highlighted on that, what we're going to touch on tonight. So here's the great part, right? Going out with your agent. This is what everybody gets excited about. They get excited about looking at properties and kind of visualizing what their next home is going to be. So you've already talked to your mortgage broker, you've gotten a pre-approval. Now, whether you have an agent that you've already met with before, you'd like to use, you've built a good rapport with, or you're finding one. Douglas Elliman is the best, by the way. Joking, but not joking. Yeah, but we do have really great agents, including Josh and myself. We have been in the business about a little over 3 years now, 3.5 years now. And we pretty much started this business that we have from the ground up. So we've seen it all. We started in rentals, we've put people in rentals, we've also sold to people that have had rentals. So we know, we really do know the process. So you come to your agent, you say, hey, I want to buy a property in Manhattan, let's say Harlem. I live in Harlem, right? I want to buy a property in Harlem. I've gotten pre-approved for $450,000. Great, all right, you've gotten pre-approved for $450,000. Now, anybody that knows Manhattan, what are you finding for $450,000? Let's be real, right? So you've spoken with your agent basically tells you, okay, Janet, realistically, $450,000 is just not going to work. We might need to go outside of Harlem. Maybe we might need to go to I don't know, Queens, or we might need to go to the Bronx, whatever. We've had that conversation with people before. But the point is that your agent is going to be able to let you know what your pre-approval or what your finances can afford you. So now we say, hey, this is what we can afford. I've looked up some places, and the best thing to do with your agent really is to sit down in their office, at a coffee shop, whatever, and kind of just walk through the process with them. Let them walk you through the process. We have clients come in and we have them sit with us. We walk them through the process. We basically say, hey, who's your mortgage broker if you're financing? Some people do all cash, and yes, all cash is more favorable, but you can still run into issues with all cash deals, right? It's not a smooth process. This process is not smooth by any means, but we try to make it as smooth as possible. So you sit down with your agent, you've basically said, hey, I want to purchase. We walk you through the steps, and if you look inside your folder, you'll be able to see that there's like a timeline, like a time process. That's key. If you take anything from this, these handouts that are in here, because I know a lot of people are probably going to just like get rid of them, but that's key. That along with our business cards that's in there. That process is basically going to tell you what you should expect, right? That's the standard process. So with the timeline, you're sitting down, we're talking about it. We may even pull up some listings on the computer and say, hey, look, this is what is on the market right now for your price point. And you say, oh, okay, I love this place. Pictures don't do you justice. We will need to sit, actually schedule a time with you to take you out and look at these properties. So you schedule a time with your agent, and you now go out and you start looking at properties. Maybe we pull about 3 to 5 properties to look at within the span of 2 days. You've identified a property. You're like, oh, I love this. I want to put in an offer at $400,000. Okay, this is where your agent basically lets you know whether you're crazy for putting in $400,000 offer, or you're smart for doing that. Or we basically might suggest and say, hey, I think you should go lower because these are the comps of the building, this is priced too high, I think that you should offer this price. And you really want to have that comfortable relationship and trust your agent. If you don't trust your agent to help you find this home and put in the right offer, because our job is to negotiate for you. We don't work, if you're a buyer coming to an agent, where our obligation is to you. That's why you sign a disclosure. Agency disclosure basically identifies and says, hey, this person works for the seller, so therefore they're going to negotiate on the seller's behalf, or hey, this person works for the buyer, and they're going to do the best to get me the best deal and the best, things on this property. So anyway, with that being said, we're going at $400,000, right? You put in this offer. And you're negotiating. So there may be little things like, I don't know, fixtures. There are all these like little technical things that your agent basically is going to take care of. Now in the process of that, once your agent reaches out to the seller's broker, we're also going to maybe submit the pre-approval. So they're always going to ask for a pre-approval. That's why we ask you to get that first before we even start looking at properties. Because trust me, this process can go very, very fast. I've taken a client out in one day, identified a property, put in an offer in one day, and literally contracts were out the next. So that's how fast the process can go. If you look on the table, there's a revenue financial sheet right over here, and you guys can like kind of take a look at that and pass that around. When we meet with clients, we always, and this is before looking at a property, we always like to have them fill that out if they're really interested in buying a property. Because this allows us to see what your finances look like before even, looking at anything, putting in an offer at anything. And a lot of people get scared at that. They're like, oh, I don't want to disclose this, that, and the third, but then you're not ready to buy, right? Because if you can't disclose your finances, and we'll get to the co-op versus condo, because that's like a whole nother ball game right there. But if you're not prepared to disclose that, then you really don't have, you're really not prepared to buy, because they are going to ask you for those things. Your mortgage broker is going to ask you for that. Your attorney is going to look into, all of those things. So anyway, you would fill that out, and then we would take a look at it. We do the debt to income ratio, and that's something that we can discuss, one-on-one with everybody, if we get a chance to talk. But all those things are important, because all of those things qualify you. So we've identified a property, we've decided to put in an offer. Now the contracts are starting to go. The people that are contacted once the offer is put in are going to be your mortgage broker and your attorney. At this point, when we've met with you, we've probably already suggested, hey, do you have an attorney, right? If not, I can refer you to somebody. So we may refer you to somebody like Jajan Law, Martine, and you would speak with them beforehand, or you can even do it in the process of viewing the apartment and actually putting in an offer. So anyway, you would do that. That way you have your attorney on the back, on the back end, and once you've already put in an offer and contracts are out, then now that's when the process starts, right? 10 to 20% may go into escrow, depending on what the property is or what the stipulations are on the property, and that's going to be, and your down payment doesn't actually go, isn't actually collected until the actual closing. So this is if you're financing. If you're all cash, then it would be 10% down at contract signing, and then the rest of the cash at closing. Okay, so let's see, where are we at? So now we've already gone ahead and done the contracts. They're out. Both parties sign. First, the buyer signs, and then the seller countersigns. So once the seller countersigns, it is executed. You are locked in, and sometimes people get scared of this too, but you're locked in, and that's beneficial for both parties, because now, if the seller comes around and maybe they get another offer that's higher than yours, they really can't back out, because they actually are going to be penalized for that, and you can't really back out because you would be losing your deposit, right? So that's kind of, not to scare you, but that's kind of what that is. So anyway, so now we've already done contract signing, we've already put down our 10%. Your attorney is your go-to person for that, and Martine will definitely talk about that. And then your mortgage broker is going to basically make sure that they're going to do their due diligence on their end and make sure that funds are available and ready. In that process, you may also need an appraisal, which the mortgage broker will also take care of and handle. Depending on if it's a co-op or a condo, you may need a title. So, sorry, if it's a condo, you're going to need a title insurance. If it's co-op, you don't need title insurance. So, I don't care what anybody tells you, because we've run into this problem where a building that's a co-op will say, hey, we need you to pay title insurance. You don't pay title insurance on co-ops, okay? So anyway, let's talk real quickly about co-op versus condo. To make it simple, the plain difference between co-op versus condo is that with a co-op, you own shares of the property or of the building, right? So think of it like maybe a timeshare. You and your girlfriends or your guy friends, whatever, you guys go into this timeshare and you basically put in X amount of dollars into a timeshare. You can always sell your timeshare, but you don't own the entire timeshare. So you can't sell off the entire timeshare because you all decide to put into it. So that's my best explanation of that, right? So you own a share of the corporation. So you don't outright own a co-op. With a condo, you outright own that. You can do whatever you want. If you want to have, mom, dad, aunt, whoever living in it, you can do whatever you want with that property. But with a co-op, generally it's going to be an interview process. And actually, to backtrack a little bit, you're going to have a big board package. And they dig into your finances. That's the key thing to remember. They do dig into your finances, and you have to be able to explain and expose a lot. But with the co-op, it is definitely going to be cheaper in price. I want to say, if anybody knows off the top of your head, isn't it like a 10 to 20% difference? I think with the co-op, right? So that's the difference in price. So generally, a lot of people will go co-op because for their first time home, because it's cheaper. You're going to find cheaper pricing, and also there's more inventory because 75% of the market is made up of co-op apartments. And a lot of people don't know that. New York City is based on co-ops. I mean, I think a few years ago it was maybe like 80%. So you have about, anywhere from 20 to 25% that's strictly condo, but you're looking at, you really won't be able to find a condo, one-bedroom condo that's going to be below 1 million. And that's just really just a fact, right? So anyway, co-op versus condo. With a condo, like I said, you can do whatever you want with it outright. There's no interview process. They might maybe do like a meet and greet. You may have a small package, which is fine, but it's usually just for them to review your finances and make sure that you qualify. With the co-op, They also expect for you to have, and this is when I say they, I mean the co-op board, they expect for you to have a about 12 to 24 months of maintenance and help me out, Josh. Gosh, I'm trying to remember. Of maintenance and mortgage. Yes, thank you. Sorry, drew a blank. So that also too, if you have a good agent, they'll be able to let you know that, because we run into a situation where we didn't even realize till the end, once everything was done, we realized that our clients had less money in the bank than when we started. And that was just because the process took so long. So yeah, so that's something important to remember. So yeah, so you've identified a property. Before that, you had already met with your mortgage broker, you identified a property, you put out an offer, you signed contracts, and now at this point, you're basically just playing the waiting game if it's a co-op, where you're submitting the package, which like I said is gonna have all of your information, all of your finances, all of your assets, maybe even, you know, family members. You're gonna be doing reference letters for these co-op packages. That's probably one of the things that takes the longest, because you have to get, generally the standard is about 3 business and 3 personal reference letters. And so you're gonna have to get these from people that you know, people that are gonna be able to, you know, write good letters for you. And other than that, also too, commitment letters from the bank, and all of these processes, you'll be able to talk with, you know, Citizens if you know, reach out to them. And then in between that, you're talking with your attorney, right? Your attorney is basically gonna let you know what part that they play, or how they're gonna walk you through this process. Now, fast forward to the end, the agent is gonna be with you, and we generally like to be with our clients at closing. You know, we don't like to let clients feel like they're alone at closing, so usually Josh or I will be there, or both of us will be there. And we just wanna make sure that everybody, all parties are there, and also too that everything is the way it's supposed to be, as far as like, you know, certain forms that might have to be filled out, certain checks that might have to be, we kind of just sit back and just like watch everything. We really don't say much at closing, but that's pretty much like our role from start to finish in, what is this, like 7 to 10 minutes. But I'm gonna have Martine come up here and talk about his role as an attorney, and then we can go right into questions and answers, which I think will be very helpful.
Jan,
yeah.
In regards to co-ops too, it's really important to work with a really
credible agent that you guys trust, right? So Josh and Janet are here, and they are one of the best at Douglas Elliman. We do a lot of work with them. But with a co-op, one thing that we didn't mention is that you're going to be in front of a board, right? And putting that board package together, and pretty much aligning everything. And again, when you get in front of the co-op board, in terms of a condo and co-op, one of the biggest differences is that for a condo, you don't really have to get in front of a co-op board. But for a co-op, you're actually in front of a co-op board, and they can actually deny you with really no cause, right? So you could have good credit, you could have, you know, good financing. They don't really have to disclose why you're not being approved by a co-op board. So just keep that in mind, and that's why it's so important to sort of really get all of your finances in line. You know, letters of recommendation, you know, things of that nature will be key, and working with, you know, a really, really credible and knowledgeable agent in that building will be helpful as well. So.
And I was going to say, actually, good thing you said that. To that point, with the co-op package, we do that for you from start to finish. Really, the only thing that you're doing is handing us what we request or what the board requests, right? You're not at home, sitting at home, putting together a package. I go through packages, I want to say, at least 10 times before it's submitted. I'm very, very anal about that. You know what I'm saying? So, like he said, it's very important to work with agents that are very knowledgeable with co-ops, and also too attorneys and mortgage brokers that are very familiar with a lot of these buildings that are in New York City. Citizens is one of the best at that. Like, they service a lot, if not all of the tri-state area, right, and the world. So definitely very important. I'm gonna go ahead and let Martine take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you to Josh and to Janet for setting this up. You know, echoing some statements, the people that you surround yourself with on what's going to be one of the largest transactions of your life is extremely, extremely important. And we've seen a lot of deals that did not go smoothly because, to echo Ace, maybe somebody used their cousin or the cousin of a cousin who's a personal injury attorney but didn't know what he was doing when it came to real estate. Or they used a broker that maybe was recommended to somebody but wasn't all that great for one reason or another. But when you can find a team that works together very, very well, then your interests are going to be protected. If for no other reason, then everybody on that team is accountable to one another, right? So I do a lot of business with Citizens, and I do business with Janet and with Josh. And if I were to screw up for whatever reason, which I don't, then I would lose their business. And so the idea is, because I'm accountable to them, I'm going to do a good job for you. And the same is true with every member of the team that you're seeing this evening. So accountability and finding yourself a team that will work together smoothly, seamlessly, and in your best interest, because it's in everybody's best interest to do so, that's really a key component. So, what's the role of a real estate attorney, and why did I get into real estate instead of doing a number of other different types of law where maybe I could have made a little bit less money, a little bit more money? And that's because I like real estate, because you actually get the feeling that you're helping people. You're helping people achieve what their goals are. Ace said before that the greatest wealth creation technique that might be available to you is buying a home. So, and most people, the majority of their net worth is tied up in their home. So what I get to do on a daily basis is I get to make sure that the transaction that you're bargaining for should go off without any problems, without any hitches, and that you, at the closing table, will be happy, right? Because you found a new home for yourself and for your families. Now, I like that because basically I get to see somebody happy every day, and not a lot of attorneys do, right? A lot of attorneys are there to make people miserable, right? So it's a little bit of a flip there. And the more unhappy you might be about something, the more money an attorney makes. So I like to flip it around somehow and make sure if you're happy buying your home and you're starting a new venture, a new area, or I should say a new era in your life, that I'm a part of that. So, what is the role of a real estate attorney? Well, you realize I'm the last person up here, and they didn't save the best for last, because I'm the last person involved in the transaction. What will happen is that once you have what's called an accepted offer, right, that your real estate broker has helped you negotiate, that's usually when I'm contacted. And I have to be contacted extremely quickly, because the market moves very, very fast. You heard Jajan say that contracts go out within 24 hours. Not only that, but usually contracts get signed within 3 to 5 business days. So all the ducks have to be in a row. So now what are we doing during those 3 to 5 business days? Well, the first thing we'll do is we'll get hired by you. And we do that by way of a letter of engagement. And if there's an attorney out there that's not providing you with a letter of engagement, and he says, don't worry about it, I'll charge you later, run for the hills, right? According to New York law, below a certain threshold of fees that are going to be charged, the attorney is required to provide you with a letter of engagement. Letter of engagement is going to state what services are going to be provided and what fees are going to be charged. And it's a good thing to have everything there in black and white to make sure that everybody is kept honest. And the way that we practice is the more things that are in black and white, the more better understandings that we have, the more it makes for a better relationship. Right? We don't want to have a bad relationship with you. We want to make sure that you're getting exactly what you think you bargained for. All right? So a letter of engagement is absolutely 100% necessary. If we're representing you as buyers, what will then happen is a deal sheet will be circulated. And the deal sheet will have the essential terms of the transaction. What's the purchase price? When are you closing? How much are you financing? Is there anything that's included with the sale, such as fixtures, chandeliers? Maybe there was a table that you saw during the walk, while you were looking at the apartment that you liked, and the seller says, I don't want it anymore. Well, we're going to make sure that that's in the contract. Essentially, the deal sheet is like a skeleton for the attorneys to be able to start drafting the contract. Now, if I'm representing you as a buyer, First, I'm going to get that contract within a day. And at the same time, I'm going to do what's called due diligence on the building where you're buying. And that involves a couple of different components. Number one, I'm going to be reviewing the financial statements of the building. Every building in New York is run like a business. There are common charges that are collected in the case of a condominium, or maintenance charges that are collected monthly in the case of a co-op. And those are used to pay the expenses of the building. And that building, we're going to take a look at their financial statements for the last 2 years and make sure that the building is financially sound. What does that mean? It doesn't have expenses that exceed the income. It has some kind of a reserve fund for capital improvements that it might have to make. If it doesn't have an adequate reserve fund, then maybe it's funding capital improvements and improvements to the building through what's called an assessment, which is a temporary, let's say, added amount to your maintenance or your common charges, right? Depending on whether it's a co-op or a condo. So these are all things that we're going to review, because it's not really enough that somebody says, well, you know, the common charges on this apartment are $500 a month. We've done our due diligence. We've looked into the building. We've looked into the real estate taxes that are being charged, because we checked on the New York City website. We've contacted the managing agent. We've verified the managing agent for the building. Every building tends to have a managing agent, unless it's very, very small, let's say 3 to 5 units. But anything above 10 or 15 units will usually have an independent third party that's managing the building, making sure the garbage is picked up, making sure that the hallways are clean, making sure that there's a superintendent, if not on site, at least available for any repairs. That's what the managing agent does. We get in touch with the managing agent. We verify the common charges or the maintenance, as it might be. What else are we going to do in terms of our due diligence? Every condo or co-op will meet several times a year, and they have a board of directors. And they're going to get together and they're going to look and they're going to say, okay, well, who's been a bad tenant, right, in the case of a co-op? Who's been a bad owner in the case of a condo? We want to make sure that there aren't too many people maybe who are in arrears, meaning that they haven't paid their common charges or their maintenance, as the case might be. We're going to review the minutes. The board of directors of a condo or a co-op, they get together and they memorialize by what's called minutes of the meeting what in the building needs work, what are things that they need to pay attention to. Could be a bad boiler that they're going to have to fix, could be a bad roof that they're going to have to fix, could be elevator maintenance, there could be a lawsuit because somebody had a slip and fall. Whatever it might be, we're going to look into all that, and we're going to make sure that you're fully aware of what the ups, the advantages, or the disadvantages of buying in this particular building might be. And when we find all that information, then we're going to put together what's called a due diligence memo for you. Now, at the same time, within those 3 to 5 days that I mentioned, we're also negotiating the contract. And what does that mean? Well, we're going to make sure that the price is properly memorialized. That's the easy part, right? The closing date is memorialized as well. That's an easy thing. We want to make sure that that's in black and white. But most first-time home buyers, and this is of utmost importance, will have what's called a mortgage contingency clause. A mortgage contingency clause essentially states that in the event that you cannot get a bank to commit to finance your acquisition, your purchase, in 30 days or maybe 45 days, depending on what we negotiate for you, but usually 30 days is the standard, then you're going to get your money back, right? It's an escape clause, if you want to look at it that way. So you've handed Janet your pre-approval letter, and that's all well and good, but what if some kind of circumstance has changed in your lending power, right? Your borrowing power, I should say, or maybe there's an issue related to the building, because the building starts to look into, I should say the lender, Citizens, will also look into the building. Are they on their approved list? Have they lent there before? If they're not on their approved list, they'll start looking into things. And so you're going to get 30 days under a standard mortgage contingency clause where if for some reason Citizens or another bank says, we do not want to lend in this building, or we do not want to lend to you for whatever reason, you then get your money back. Now that's a very important thing for first-time home buyers to have. And it tends to be at the lower price points within the market, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, it tends to be the norm. Once you start getting into the upper stratospheres of the market, then it's not as common, because you do have a lot of cash buyers, you have a lot of people that are buying for whatever reason, pied-à-terres, wealthy, wealthy foreigners, so it's not quite as common. But I think you'll agree with me, at the let's say $400,000 to $1 million price point, it's more typical than not, right? Even in this market that tends to be very, very hot at that price point. So now we've agreed that you've got a contract and you've got the due diligence memo and you want to proceed and you say, okay, Martine, I'm game. Let's sign on the dotted line and move this transaction forward. Great. 10% of the down payment of 10%, usually could be 20% if you're buying new construction, but usually it's going to be 10% if you're buying a resale, is going to then go to the seller's attorney's escrow account. That money cannot be touched unless two things happen. Number one, you default on your contract, you decide that for whatever reason you don't want to purchase anymore, and the seller will then say, fine, but I'm going to keep your deposit. Or number two, that money gets liberated, meaning it's released from the attorney's escrow account at the closing. And then you've got to figure out a way to come up with the other 90% that you need for the closing. And that can come by way of financing. If you're financing 80%, then you're going to come out of pocket 10% at closing, right? But what are we doing? After you've signed that contract, and so you've signed the contract, you're happy moving forward, your 10% is now with the seller's attorney, and then we're going to do one of two different things. If it's a co-op, we're going to run a lien search on the property itself, right? Or I should say on the shares, okay? That's to make sure that in the event that that seller took out a loan, you don't want to buy it subject to that loan. We want to make sure that that lien is then lifted at the closing so that you're buying a property that doesn't have a lien on it, that's free and clear of any liens except for the lien that your own lender is going to put on it, okay? Or in the event that you're buying a condominium, we're going to run what's called a title search. A title search essentially does the same thing. It's a little bit more involved, there's a little bit more information there. But the idea really, the number one component behind the title search is to make sure that if the seller has a mortgage on that property, we know about it, and that mortgage is going to be paid off at the closing. And then, so what else are we doing? Now we're gearing up and we're getting ready for the closing. And then your bank says we're all set to go. We say, great, we know what liens are on the property. Now we're going to schedule the closing. And then at the closing itself, we're going to make sure that all of the documentation is properly prepared. What does that mean? You're going to get a deed in the event of a condominium. The deed has to be accurate. You're going to get a share certificate in the event that you're buying a co-op. That share certificate has to be accurate, right? And you're also going to be signing a lot of loan documents, which we're going to be reviewing, and we're going to be walking you through not only where to sign, but also verifying that the interest rate that you bargained for is actually there in black and white on the promissory note, all right? That the mortgage documents are accurate as well. And then there are these things that they're called transfer tax documents. Every single sale has what's called ACRIS documents, A-C-R-I-S, for the registry that's used in New York City. Or it's going to have, or I should say New York State. Or it's going to have what we call transfer documents, which are going to show that all of the amounts that are payable at the closing are properly stated, and all of the taxes that are then paid. There's a transfer tax in New York that has to be paid by the seller unless you're buying new construction, in which case then it's paid by the buyer. It's going to have a mansion tax if what you're doing is equivalent to 1% of the sales price. if what you're doing is if you're buying new construction. So we're going to look at all the taxes and make sure that nobody is, let's say, shifting a cost to you that should be paid by the seller. And the seller's attorney is making the same thing, or is ensuring the same thing. That the seller is paying what they owe, the buyer is paying what they owe. And we're going to give you guidance on all of that. Not only by virtue of a closing cost calculation that we're going to prepare for you before the closing, so you know every single penny that you're going to be spending at the closing, but also looking at the documents themselves at the closing. And then if all is well and good, we give you a bottle of champagne, right? We say mazel tov or congratulations, depending on what church or synagogue you go to, and everybody leaves happy. So,
Thank you guys, by the way, for showing up again. Don't want anybody falling asleep. We are going to open up the floor for Q&A. Again, any questions you guys have, please feel free to ask. Don't feel any question is a stupid question. Again, I put this team together more so not to really scare you guys, but just give you guys information on how the purchasing process works. And also, don't feel like you're stuck to New York City. That's one thing that, especially inner city kids are taught, like you have to purchase in New York City. When you start hearing $400,000, you start thinking mansions, especially when you're in New York City. Start, just opening up your mind to purchasing in like Jersey cities, Pennsylvanias. And that's the real big reason why I started this, is because, outside of this team, we do everything for New York City, but it's just more so for the information and then just open up your mind to ownership. But let's...
And I was going to say, we do have Douglas Elliman, we have offices all over. We also work with Knight Frank, who is an international real estate company. So if you need to find something in Connecticut, Jersey, Tri-State area, everywhere in California, Miami, whatever, we can put you in touch with the right people to be able to make those purchases happen, okay?
It's easier to think you're famous, it's harder to work for greatness. These kids nowadays give prevalence to the latest. So if the party start at 8ish, I'm coming like next Tuesdays. They like when your life's debated, they love when you